Oh, hi. I'm Joe Westbrook, registration number 131897. The athlete I was treating is a fellow student of mine called Josh. He's 21 years old. He does a lot of hypertrophy slash bodybuilding training as he's training to do the men's physique competition. He trains quite a lot, so it's 2 times a day, about 5 times a week, and it's normally split into different body parts every different day. The history of present condition is that he got a gradual onset of pain in his left shoulder, and this was started off at about a 1 out of 10, and then over the last few weeks it's gradually got worse, and it's in the anterior of his shoulder, and the pain onset is normally when he exercises, so in quite heavy compound movements such as bench press or shoulder press, that's when the pain is really bad. It doesn't really get any stiffness at night, but in the morning, so AM, it feels quite stiff, especially in movements such as abduction and internal rotation. About 2 weeks ago he went for a massage. He said he got his pecs released, a lot of upper traps, anterior and posterior deltoid, which was effective short term, but after a while the pain onset returned. He still has stiffness in the internal rotation and abduction, which causes the pain. For the objective assessment, we looked at some of the special tests of the shoulder. We tested NIRS, which is resisted flexion and internal rotation, and that was positive. Quite a lot of pain in the shoulder there. We did Hawkins-Kennedy, which is resisted flexion and internal rotation, and we looked at empty tinny, which is simply internally rotating with the arms in a flexed position, all presenting with positive findings, suggesting that there's some irritation to the rotator cuff, looking more specifically at the supraspinatus tendon. We cleared the long-headed biceps tendon and also any labral damage that may be present in the shoulder by using Yergeson's, and also sort of labral tests like the crank test and palpation to the shoulder. So judging by the findings that we had in the objective assessment, we can almost assume that there's some irritation or maybe a slight impingement to the supraspinatus tendon. But now I want to look more globally, look at the way his body functions and see if there's any contributing factors that may be bringing the onset of pain. So as beautiful as London is, let's go to a more professional setting. So here we are looking at full range abduction of the shoulders on Josh. As you can see, the left scapula on this repetition here actually moves faster than the right side, suggesting there's a lack of control. So with Josh, we're doing an anterior step with a bilateral overhead reach. What we find is there's a bit of restriction in the thoracic spine, meaning that the movement hinges from about T12 at the lumbothoracic junction. So here we have Josh doing sitting rotation. The movement of the scapula isn't too bad, but you can see that all the rotation is coming from the lumbar spine, again reiterating that stiffness in the thoracic region. So in this video I'm just guiding Josh's left scapula into rotation as he abducts the shoulder. The aim is to get a good grip of the scapula and just guide the motion. And in this one I'm using the hand on the right scapula, again reproducing that rotation as he abducts the right shoulder. So for this FMR I am using my hand to apply pressure to the transverse processes either side of the spine, at different segments of the spine, just to try and bring back some extension of the thoracic. As previously said before, we have a lot of hinging through T12. Further on doing the assessment, we added the anterior lunge to look off the hips on Josh. Meant that most of the motion can now come from the spine itself, and hopefully bringing back that range of motion. We then moved on to flexion of the spine with a similar technique that we did in extension, with the hands on either side of the transverse processes. When I educated Joff to relax his arms, he then gained more flexion through the spine, showing that there is actually some motion there. So now that the FMR tools have been used, it's important to retest the client just to see if it had any effect on their movement. And as you can see here with Josh, in abduction of the shoulders, the scapulohumeral rhythm is actually more equal now. The left and right show no asymmetry. So here we are with Josh retesting his extension through the spine. This is with an anterior step to influence a little bit of posterior rotation at the hips. Personally, I believe that there is still quite a lot of restrictions present. If you look there, you can see at the T12 junction, about T12L1, there's quite a lot of hinging from there. Therefore, it's important to include something in the home exercise program that improves this. As you can see in the video, I've made Josh set his scapula back before he starts the wall press. This motion is really good for strength and scapular control, especially in the pressing motion here as the scapula moves around the thoracic wall cage. To help bring back motion of the spine in flexion extension, I chose the exercise, the cat camel. As you can see in the video, it looks at extending through the thoracic spine and also flexion of the thoracic spine, a problem area that we found in Josh in the global assessment. As we can still see, Josh still has a problem area in the lumbothoracic region, still hinging there. For this test, I have got Josh to just perform a slump. What I wanted him to do is concentrate on moving through each vertebrae of the spine, which would hopefully give him more motion and reduce the hinges that we found at the lumbothoracic region. As we can see from this video, there is still quite a lot of segmental movement, especially in that mid-thoracic region. Another exercise given for Josh was foam roller thoracic extensions. As you can see on the right side, it's just looking at rolling out all the muscles in the thoracic region, such as rhomboids, lower traps and erector spinae. In the left video, the person is using the foam roller to mobilise the thoracic spine and extend. So to summarise this video log, Josh came to me with pain in the anterior shoulder. The global screening that we did showed that there was a decrease in thoracic extension and flexion, and also a delayed timing in the scapulohumeral rhythm. We used FMR to look at improving the scapulohumeral rhythm, and also FMR to look at the thoracic and flexion and extension. The scapulohumeral rhythm improved upon retest, but the thoracic extension and flexion still shows some segmental motion, mainly coming from the lumbothoracic region. The home exercise program therefore looked at the scapular setting using the wall press, and also looked at thoracic extension and flexion using exercises such as the slump and foam rolling to improve this. If I were to improve this treatment, I would readdress my handling on Josh's scapula, as the control of the motion wasn't as authentic as it should have been. So judging by the treatment and the FMR techniques used, we could really see an improvement in Josh's spinal flexion. And if he can really control them scapulas, then man, that shoulder impingement is going to be gone in no time.